Hey, Andrew here from the Revisionist Almanac. Welcome back to another edition of the Listener Mailbag episode. If you're listening to this right now, the 1976 episode with Betsy and Trent Gorham from Never Seen It has been up for 1 week. If you haven't watched that yet, go check it out first, then come back to this one. All right, let's get into the questions that you submitted for this film year. Up first, I got a question from Kyle Duran. He asked, is Rocky the most important sports film ever made? If not, what is? I would say that in my opinion, yes, Rocky is the single most important sports film, though I would also put The Bad News Bears up alongside it, which ironically also came out in 1976. What I think makes Rocky so special in the genre is it won Best Picture, and it sort of set the blueprint for the underdog story that we've seen told countless times in so many sports films over the last 50 years. The next question is from Chauncey Talese, friend of the show. He asked, did Network finish second in Best Picture and Best Director? I do believe that film was the closest to taking out Rocky as the Best Picture winner, as well as in the Best Director category. All you have to do is look at what it did below the line and see that it was very much in contention alongside Rocky that year. Chauncey also asked, if voters knew Julia was coming, would Jason Robards still win? As far as Robards and his win for Julia in 1977, I'm going to leave this question unanswered, and I'm going to tease to you that Chauncey, along with Heather Stewart, who was on the 2016 episode, will both be joining me next season, and we're going to discuss the year 1977. And I'm sure I'm going to have plenty more to say about that when we get to it. Another question from Chauncey. He said, if Peter Finch hadn't died, would he still have won in the lead actor category? Now, I think to Betsy's point on the episode, he'd probably still win. He did take the Golden Globe win earlier that season, and it seemed like it was the time and place for him to get the Oscar. To follow up on that, Chauncey asked who finished second in the lead actor category. Looking at who was nominated and what else won on the night, I think Sylvester Stallone was probably second on the ballot, with De Niro maybe being hurt in the voting since he was already an Oscar winner to this point just a few years earlier. And the questions keep rolling in from my man Chauncey. He asked, was this the closest Sidney Lumet came to winning the Best Director Oscar? Now, he was nominated 4 times in his career for director, those being 12 Angry Men in 1957, Dog Day Afternoon in 1975, this year 1976, and then one final time for The Verdict in 1982. It's funny because I still have to cover 1975 and 1982 this season, and then I'll cover 1956 next season. But I would say, based on what I've seen, Network was far and away his best chance based on the other nominees in those other years he was in contention. And one last question from Chauncey. He asked, what finished second in the screenplay categories this year? Now, Network won original screenplay, and All the President's Men won adapted screenplay, and both felt like slam dunk wins. However, based on the field, I would say Rocky was second in original, the other nominees being Kuzan Kuzan, The Front, and Seven Beauties. And then I think Bound for Glory was probably second place in the adapted screenplay category, the other nominees being Fellini's Casanova, The 7% Solution, and Voyage of the Damned. None of those films great and worthy of being in the mix. Moving over to a question from past guest of the show, Sean Phillips, aka Math Teacher Movies. He said, Network, best movie of all time? Now, I know this is a loaded question, but a case can certainly be made, as I basically stated during my pitch for it as my revised Best Picture winner, that I think this is one of the most relevant films still to this day. Sean knows movies. Listen to Sean. I also got a question submitted from Amanda over at Oscar Upsets, and Amanda will be joining the show in a couple of seasons, so stay tuned for her appearance. She said, oh no, Logan's Run. I have no questions about it, just concerns. To that I say, you and me both, Amanda. I also got a question from Everett over at Watch This Film blog. He said, I know this year has some notoriety for Rocky's win for Best Picture. If there were no sequels made, would there be as much controversy over it taking Best Picture in modern Oscars discourse? Short answer, I would say probably not, though it would still, I think, be harshly compared to Network and Taxi Driver, which have both maintained, if not grown in influence, significantly more than Rocky over the last 40 to 50 years. Shifting gears a little bit, I got a question from No Yeah Totally Dude over on Instagram. He asked, every version of A Star is Born is bad, but which in your opinion is the worst? That is a lot to unpack right there. I will first off say I don't believe every version of A Star is Born is bad. I actually find the Lady Gaga Bradley Cooper to be one of the best films of that year, which I will eventually address when I do cover that year. But as I said on the episode, this 1976 version of A Star is Born with Barbra Streisand and Chris Christopherson is my least favorite of the four out there. I just think, as we also said on the episode, there's something that happens in the climactic third act that doesn't quite fit with the rest of the films, and I think leaves this one a little bit below. Moving over to a question from Kat over at Veg Out. She asked, what's your favorite musical score from 1976? The unquestioned best musical score for me was John Carpenter's Assault on Precinct 13, which Trent was very eager to talk about, but we just happened to run out of time on the episode. I do think it's worth going to YouTube and checking out the score, because if you're a fan of John Carpenter's work, you're going to find a lot to dig in the Assault on Precinct 13 soundtrack, even if the film isn't that great. The next question I got is from a past and a future guest of the show. That's the good buddy Mike over at Cinemusts. Mike asked, Carrie is my favorite Stephen King adaptation. What's yours and why? Now, this probably isn't going to be the answer that Stephen King himself would want to hear if he happened to be listening right now, but mine is very much Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. I think what makes it so special to me is it uses the foundation of King's work and it builds on it to create something that's a piece of art beyond what even King had envisioned for his film. Up next, I got a question from Rod Peters Jr. Movie Reviews. He said, I've always played the game of who would you cast now in Murder by Death? Who would you go with and why? Now, I will be completely transparent. I did not watch Murder by Death on prep for the episode. However, I have since watched it between when we recorded that and when I'm getting to talk about this. Now, I don't even know if I could comprehend how I would go about recasting this, other than to say, I am glad I went and watched Murder by Death because it was an interesting performance from Alec Guinness, who most of us will primarily know as Obi-Wan Kenobi in 1977 Star Wars. And also there was an Asian character in the film that was so racist it's hard to even comprehend, and that kind of soured my whole experience with Murder by Death. Have you ever wanted to interact in person with your favorite independent movie podcasters? June 3rd through June 6th, 2026. Lake Superior State University, Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, the Upper Peninsula. Adam St. John of the incredible 1001 by 1 podcast is hosting a special event that you are invited to. Come hang out with Adam, myself, and many others who have already RSVP'd, with plenty more to follow. We'll be screening movies as a group, networking, hosting panels on a range of topics, and the event will feature live podcasts that you can be part of in person. And all of this will be free of charge. We'll have plenty more details in the months to come, but if you want to reserve your place at the festival, send your RSVP directly to Adam by emailing 1001by1@gmail.com. We can't wait to see you there. We now bend the knee to the question queen, who brought plenty to the table. Heather Stewart's here with some good stuff for us. Her first question: where does All the President's Men rank for you compared to all other investigative journalism thrillers? Now, this question is right in my wheelhouse, as Trent and I kind of bonded over on the episode. We both have a little bit of a journalism background. We both, at one point in our lives, thought we might go into journalism, and so this is near and dear to my heart. For me, All the President's Men is number one, and as I said on the episode, this was the movie that got me into wanting to be a journalist and having an absolute love of the genre ever since. Heather also asked, how have the themes of Network held up over time, and discussed the film's relevance today? Quite frankly, it's scary how relevant the film is in 2025. What started as a satirical film in 1976 has become the hell with which we now live in, much like Idiocracy from 2006, which I also just recently watched for an episode of the show, so those are both very fresh in my brain. The next question from Heather: watching Bugsy Malone in a vacuum, is it obvious that Jodie Foster would have become the biggest acting star of the cast? Now, I hadn't seen Bugsy Malone pre-prep, so I can't really say how I felt about all of these actors before getting to this. However, based on what we know now, and based on the cast, the answer is definitely yes. I don't think the movie was very good, which is why it got 0 mentions during the actual 1976 episode. Also, the less I have to think about or talk about Scott Baio for the rest of my life, the better. Charles is definitely not in charge. Another question from Heather. She said, how did Carrie and Sissy Spacek's performance pave the way for more awards recognition for the horror genre? I think between what Linda Blair did in 1973's The Exorcist and then this performance by Sissy Spacek, they helped tremendously to give credibility and opportunity for women being given chances to lead horror films and be taken seriously as actors in this genre. Heather also asked, have you done the rocky run up the steps in Philadelphia and followed it with the winner's pose at the top? Now, I have never traversed Philadelphia myself, but I can confirm I would 100% do this if I ever end up in that city, and I guarantee you I'll take a picture of that just to prove it. But if you're listening to this right now and you've done the rocky steps and documented it, send me your pictures because I want to see yours. And one final question from Heather. She said, is the Rocky theme the most inspiring music of all time? Now, I do love the Rocky theme music. The answer is probably yes, especially since the Chariots of Fire theme doesn't hit me as hard, since that movie, quite frankly, sucks. However, give me Survivor's Eye of the Tiger from Rocky 3 as the coolest damn song made for a movie ever. Up next, we got a question from Jeff the Movie Man. This is a bit of a long one, so hang with me. He said, I read a long time ago that Paul Schrader's script for Taxi Driver was written in 5 days with a loaded gun on his desk for inspiration. While the script was still one of the film's 4 Oscar-nominated components, do you think little tricks like that help make a film better? Or is it just good or bad whether or not there's a loaded gun, a shaved head, or a nice little diet to add to the aspect? Now, judging by some of his own opinions on social media over the last few years, I think Paul Schrader could do with a healthy dose of therapy. I don't think the way he wrote Taxi Driver led to it being a better film, and I think based on some of Schrader's work that he's directed himself, in most cases he needs a director that can transform his work into something greater. And I owe much of the success of Taxi Driver to Scorsese and to De Niro. Up next, good buddy Kevin Scanlon posed a question. He said, what's your 1976 Mount Rushmore? It doesn't have to be the consensus 4 best films, just give me your 4 favorites. Now, these would all be in my 5 nominees on the 1976 episode, since my favorites often, but not always, overlap with what I think is the best. If I'm giving you the 4 films from 76 you should check out to get the year as a whole, give me Carrie, give me Network, give me Rocky, and give me Taxi Driver. And now we go to another wonderful friend of the show. She'll be joining me next year to talk film. That's Jylan Sala Salman. Her first question, on a scale of 1 to 10, how hot was Dustin Hoffman in 1976? I'm holding up my scorecard here and giving Dustin Hoffman a 10. The dude was a bona fide stud back in the day, and he loved to take his shirt off as often as possible to show people just how great he was. And Jylan came with one other wonderfully weird question, as I did ask people online to send your weirdest and send your wildest. Her question, what was the thongiest moment in a 1976 movie? Yes, you heard that correctly. Thong, as in the undergarments people wear sometimes. It does serve me right for asking people online to get weird and get wild with the questions, but thank you for the insanity on this, Jylan. I'm going to leave this question, though, to Betsy and Trent to answer. That's right. For the first time since I've started these mailbag episodes, I brought my episode guests with me to answer all of these questions. So without further ado, let me turn it over to the dynamic duo from Never Seen It.
Hello, listeners of the Revisionist Almanac. My name is Trent. I'm, of course, sitting here with Betsy.
Hello, everyone.
We just did the 1976 episode of the Revisionist Almanac for that Oscar year, and we're here to answer some of the questions that you submitted to Andrew. The first question came in from Kyle Duran about Rocky, and I have a feeling going through all these questions, there's going to be a lot of discussion about Rocky in this here thing. But Kyle asks, is Rocky the most important sports film ever made? If not, what is it?
I had to think about this one, Trent, because when fact-checking this, three sports movies have won Best Picture. Do you know what the other two are?
I do not.
They are Chariots of Fire and $1 Million Baby. So it's a rare thing for a sports movie to actually take home the big prize. It's not that they never get nominated. You know,
Yep.
Moneyball's a sports movie. I'm sure if we sat here long enough, we could rattle off a bunch of other ones. And that's kind of one litmus test is, did it get nominated for Best Picture and did it win? Another one is, how culturally prevalent is it?
Yeah, the question is, what is the most important sports movie? Not the best.
And when I was thinking about Rocky in particular, I think that movie was really important for Sylvester Stallone. I think it was really important for the city of Philadelphia. At the time that it came out, people really wanted an underdog story. We talk about this at length in the episode, and we're probably going to talk about it more during this recording. I think maybe it might be, but I also don't spend my life watching a lot of sports movies.
No, if you listen to our show, we're going to say a whole lot about the fact that, I mean, me in particular, I don't like the really sappy, saccharine, inspirational sports movie. I do not get down with stuff like that.
And this one is inspirational without being that.
Correct. But Betsy, I'm going to disass with you.
You have an answer.
The most important sports movie of all time is Happy Gilmore.
Oh, you jerk.
No, I mean, think about this. Rocky, I believe, created the template for what a good sports movie can be, where the sports is kind of an accessory to the rest of the story. Rocky isn't really a boxing movie. Rocky is a story about a down and out guy who falls into this thing because circumstances. So the sports nature of it is secondary to what you're really trying to get at here. And then you kind of go forward in time, you think about a subgenre of film like the musician biopic. The movie Walk the Line created that template that just got repeated and repeated and repeated so many times after that movie came out.
As far as the modern ones go anyway.
Yeah, same thing with Rocky. That story of this down and out sports guy or gal has been repeated ad nauseum. Are they good movies? Probably. I haven't seen a lot of them.
Or they're at least okay or watchable.
Absolutely.
But they all took it from Rocky, which is why I'm saying, what does important mean? I think it's inarguable to say it is an important sports movie.
Yeah, and I do agree.
I can't come up with one that's more important.
Yeah, it is important because it created that template that got repeated ad nauseum, like I said. So the answer is yes.
The second question came in from Chauncey Talese. Did Network finish second in Best Picture and Best Director?
I feel like because this was such a packed year, when you're looking at a movie like this in 2025, the hindsight really, really helps it just because of the prescience, and we're going to talk about that later. But because Network is so prescient to this day, it's really hard to have the rose-colored glasses about the fact that Rocky was such an important movie for the day. And I think you really have to put yourself in the position of somebody in 1976 when the movie came out. It's because it is such an aspirational movie that the country really, really needed and grasped onto. And a lot of these other movies that got nominated for Best Picture and Best Director, they kind of captured what people were feeling and not what they wanted.
So your answer is, you don't know?
The answer to that question is, again, because it is such a packed year with a whole lot of really heavy hitters here, pulling out of a hat, I think you would probably be right as to whoever was the second one. But, I mean, if you're going to put a gun to my head, yes, the answer is yes. It is probably number two.
I'm saying most likely it would be Network by the properties that acting nominations were going down the board for Network. Like 3 of the actors from that movie won Academy Awards and it didn't win Best Picture. And that is a sign of a lot of down ballot voting. So my leaning is yes, that it would be if it were not for Rocky. Like just the mood of the actual nation needed Rocky to be the best picture.
Yeah.
But the actual best movie that people probably would have voted for otherwise is Network. Because look at Taxi Driver. It's a modern classic, but in the grand tradition of Martin Scorsese, it got nominated for a shitload of Oscars and it won nothing.
Right. And this kind of goes into the next couple of questions here by Chauncey. If Peter Finch hadn't died, would he have still won lead actor?
I think so, because he was on the campaign trail. That guy wanted it. He worked himself to death. He wanted it so badly. And if you actually look at that performance, it's big and sensational. And I just said, other people in that cast also won, and a lot of other people also got nominated. You could just nominate everybody in that fucking movie for an Academy Award and throw a dart, somebody is bound to win it.
And I feel like the fact that he died probably put him over the top with pretty much all of the late voters of the Academy. So again, it just put it over the top because it was such a huge deal. And it happened while the voting was happening.
It's not that this is a consistent thing. He was the first one to do it, and we have had people who got nominated after they passed away, and not all of them have won.
Yep.
A lot of people get nominated. We respect the work they did, but like the year that Chadwick Boseman got nominated and Anthony Hopkins won, Anthony Hopkins was the better performance. It just was a fact. Like
it's true.
That performance ruined me. And if you look at the lineup of Peter Finch and all these other people, you know, he was in the same category as William Holden. That even could have split the vote, but it didn't. It could have, and it still all went his way.
Yeah. So all that being said about that category, who would have finished second for lead actor?
I kind of have the same thinking about this question as the last one, where the powers that be say Network is the second best movie behind Rocky. I think that in the acting category, it's probably Sylvester Stallone, because if you actually look at what he's doing in that movie, he has an arc, and there are some really moving scenes that he has in Rocky.
I had the same answer here. I said, with all of the momentum that Rocky had, I think Stallone would have snuck in there.
And it won for director. It won for best picture. He got nominated for a screenplay. You know, there's a lot of things around it that suggest to me that is the other obvious way that the Academy could have voted.
Sure. And Network absolutely had a whole lot of attention on it, especially right at the very end when Peter Finch died. So again, it's impossible to really say. This is just our feeling.
So the next question is still about Network, and specifically about director Sidney Lumet. Was this the closest Sidney Lumet came to winning Best Director? Now, I know you have not seen a lot of the movies that he's been nominated for. Oddly enough, one of them is Dog Day Afternoon, which we will be covering like in 2 days.
Yeah, we haven't watched it yet. We're covering it for our show, yes.
By the time this drops, though, you can go and listen to that episode about Dog Day Afternoon. He also did 12 Angry Men.
Yeah, so, he did that back in the 50s.
In
60s?
the 50s, 60s, yeah.
Yeah.
So he did 12 Angry Men, Dog Day Afternoon. He got nominated 2 other times in the 1980s. And when you look at what he got nominated against, I'm kind of saying no, not the 80s. So your litmus is basically 12 Angry Men, Dog Day Afternoon, Network.
Okay, this is what I wrote down about Sidney Lumet. 4 years. He had a string of 4 years. He did Serpico. He did Murder on the Orient Express. He did Dog Day Afternoon and Network. I mean, if he wouldn't have won for Network, it's just kind of downhill after that when you look at his IMDb credits.
Yeah, I think you're right. As far as like momentum, that was a guy that said, I want this, I want this, I want this, and he's cranking out so many great movies.
Exactly. He put everything to the wall there for Network, and after that, he just said, you know what, if I can't win for Network, I'm never going to win. Yeah. So I'm just going to take the paychecks.
And it's not to say he couldn't have won for 12 Angry Men and Dog Day Afternoon. I had to go and kind of fact check, because of course the question was, is this the closest he came? Well, in the year of 12 Angry Men, he lost to Bridge on the River Kwai, the director of that movie, which in the 50s, in that context, that was kind of where the Academy was.
Sure. And I didn't really look a whole lot at these other years that these other movies came out, so I didn't really go that far down into this.
Dog Day Afternoon lost to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Ah, okay.
So I was kind of like, I don't think that's going to win. So yeah, I would say you're right. It's probably the closest he got was with Network.
Finishing up Chauncey's questions, who finished second in the screenplay categories?
So I have it split up by original and adapted. So for original, again, I'm probably going with Rocky on this one just because all of the other Goodwill, everything we've already said. But the other thing that got nominated in that category that may have also swayed some people is The Front. It got nominated for original screenplay, and it was written by a bunch of people who were blacklisted, and it's a movie about the blacklist. And a lot of those guys were very much still working and present in Hollywood and in the Academy. So if there's kind of a dark horse, I would say it's probably that one, but Rocky seems the more obvious choice.
I would like to think that Seven Beauties, and we're going to talk about this later, but I would like to think that Seven Beauties would have been included in that, but no. Honestly, I believe it probably would have been Rocky just because it had all that other momentum going, and he's a first. The Academy loves to award first-time writers for this category, and we have seen it in just very recent history where the first time somebody gets something nominated, it's so novel, it's so original, and they just have to give it.
Then for the adapted screenplay, this one's a little harder because some of the movies in this category I didn't get to see. So I didn't see Casanova or The 7% Solution. I just couldn't get my hands on those movies.
And I did not even answer this question because of that.
Well, so this was where I was leaning. Given the Academy's proclivity for honoring biopics, I'm leaning Bound for Glory.
Sure.
The list for that category was much less exciting than the original category, frankly.
It always is.
The only other one that got nominated was Voyage of the Damned. So when I'm looking at Voyage of the Damned, two movies I haven't seen, and Bound for Glory, my gut tells me Bound for Glory.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a good choice. I'm just saying that maybe is a way that they could have gone.
Sure. And those two movies are really boring. So anyway, moving on.
So the next question came from Sean Phillips at Math Teacher Movies, and he simply asked, Network, best movie of all time?
Okay, so 2 years ago, Betsy and I actually covered Network for our show, and I'll tell you this, coming back after watching that movie, I think we probably had the biggest reaction we have had in all of the hundreds and hundreds of episodes that we have put out. That was our biggest reaction we ever had, the both of us, because we just came back after that movie asking, what the fuck? What the fuck? Seriously.
And it is one of those movies that despite being almost 50 years old, it will be turning 50 next year. The fact that it is still so relevant, even more so, is frightening. You can hear us for 45 minutes talking about how prescient this movie is, even 50 years removed, and it is wild. So will I go so far as to say it is the best movie of all time? I'm not prepared to make that statement, Trent, because there are thousands upon thousands of movies that I haven't watched yet. But that being said, I think you can definitely rank it amongst, the top American movies, the best movies about media. I would go so far as to say you could even put this maybe in, for right now, if this is a fluid list, best movie of all time is obviously going to change. I would put it in the top 25 movies of all time.
Okay. I was going to say top 50 at least.
At least 50. But right now, where we are, I think you have to put it higher because of
thinking just objectively.
Contextually.
Yeah, just objectively,
Yes.
I would say it's maybe in my top 10, my own.
Your personal top 10. Yeah. I don't think that's an unfair statement either.
Yeah.
And you've only seen the movie twice.
Yeah.
That's how good this movie is. You were prepared to put it in your top 10, and you've seen it twice.
Yeah. So moving on. Next question comes in from Amanda at Oscar Upsets. It's just kind of not a question. She says, "Oh no, Logan's Run. I have no questions about it, just concerns." Yeah. Betsy, do you have a reaction to that?
Simply that we did an entire episode of that one as well, and you can rest assured it did not win any Academy Awards from us.
No. The thing I wrote down about this query, I guess, I said, just the last gasp of sci-fi before Star Wars taught everyone how to do it.
That is a fair statement.
It is literally true. We talked a whole lot about the fact that Logan's Run looks like a sci-fi movie out of the 1960s, but it came out in 1976. That's kind of all you really need to know about it.
The next question came in from Everett at Watch This Film blog. The question is, I know this year has some notoriety for Rocky's win for Best Picture. If there were no sequels made, would there be as much controversy over it taking Best Picture in modern Oscars discourse?
Yeah, again, this kind of goes back to looking at the entire slate of movies as of 2025 or whatever year you are looking at it. You have to put yourself in context to where the country really was and what it really wanted. And considering the subject matter of most of the other movies on the list, at least the ones that got actually nominated, not necessarily the ones that came out that year, but of the ones that got nominated, Rocky is the obvious choice for the audience of 1976. And of course, this is back when, franchises as a concept, like movie franchises, didn't really exist all that much back in the 70s yet.
They were kind of few and far between.
Yeah, certainly not like fucking 15 of them or however many Rocky movies there are now.
I think we're up to like 9 in the core
including
story.
The extended universe of Rocky.
Yeah, the fact that we're still making Rocky movies is pretty wild. And it seems like a lot of franchises, you and I have only seen the first one. We have not seen anything beyond Rocky.
So we are not tainted by the other sequels.
So we don't have that extra information to inform our answer to this question. Just information about what I think I know. It's like watching, Fast and the Furious or Mission Impossible, where there's highs and there's lows.
And Star Wars for that case.
Star Wars too. Yeah, every time you put a new one in, it gets harder and harder to make it relevant, and you move farther and farther away from that original thing that was so good. But the thing about Rocky is, like, now that we've gotten back around to Creed, like we've spun it off, but Rocky was still in the first Creed movie, and I think the second one, like they somehow made it relevant and important again. When Sylvester Stallone gets nominated for playing the same guy almost 50 years later,
yeah,
I think there's something to it. And I think there's always going to be. It goes back to that question of, is it the most important, sports movie? Clearly, it's important enough to people that you're still tuning in. They would have stopped making these movies if nobody was ever watching them. They would not be getting nominated for Academy Awards. They would not be making millions of dollars and continuing this franchise. And by all accounts, there are some really good Rocky movies after Rocky.
Totally. And I think it's the fact that this franchise has lasted for that many years and has, like you said, remained relevant to today's audiences. Like young people go and see Creed and they want to be like the guy on the screen. Much like way back in the 70s and the 80s, kids looking up at Rocky saying, I want to be a boxer.
He's going to beat the evil Russian.
Sure.
They find a way to tie it to whatever is going on at that moment, instead of it just being another story about this boxer. It's always tied to the here and the now.
Which is why, again, I go back to 1976. People were really, really feeling the kind of depression that was going on, the malaise, if you want to bring Carter into it. They were feeling it so deeply to the point where, shit, man, let's just give it to Rocky. Let's give Best Picture to Rocky. And it just fits.
The other thing you have to remember, I don't think they ever intended to make sequels to Rocky. It just is something that kind of happened.
Of course.
No
one ever plans a sequel.
Yes and no, because
these days they do.
If you look at things like Dune and Lord of the Rings, the momentum tends to be, we'll give you an award for the final entry.
Yeah, the summation.
If you can get to the sum of your parts and conclude it in a satisfying way, maybe we'll award you at the end. Rocky has gone the exact opposite way, and yet it still manages to come back around to the Academy 50 years later.
Speaking of coming back 50 years later, there's another question here from No Yeah Totally Dude. Okay, asking the question. Every version of A Star is Born is bad, but which, in your opinion, is the worst? I'm going to feel this one right away, Betsy. You're just wrong.
False.
You're just wrong.
They are not all bad.
Objectively wrong. But the answer to your question is the Judy Garland version.
Okay, but that's your opinion.
Yes, that's my opinion.
And I disagree with you. I think the worst version is actually the one from 1976 because there is a really critical piece that ties all of these stories together. Now, I haven't seen the original one, the one from the 1930s, but I have to assume because that's the template that emotional punch is also there. And the 1976 version robs you of that critical piece. And for me, that makes the movie lesser for it.
It is lesser for it. I would agree with that. However, I don't think that the ending robs you of the entire experience of the movie. The thing still happens to the guy.
Yes.
You just don't get the emotional payoff that you do in the other movies.
But to say that the worst, and I'm going to use those quotations, I think, because I love the Judy Garland one. I understand, though, why you don't love it. But to say it's bad, to say it's the worst, that hurts my feelings, Trent. You're hurting my feelings right now.
I mean, it's also not really my kind of music. Hey, the Chris Christopherson guy, he's up there singing rock songs, which is a lot more in my bag as far as music is concerned. And the Judy Garland thing, I just don't give a shit about.
Fair enough. But speaking of music, that brings us to the next question. So this one came in from Kat at Veg Out. What's your favorite musical score from 1976?
Oh boy. I would say when we were watching all these movies in preparation for the show, kind of every other movie that we watched, we kind of had, we had to point out, holy shit, the scores in these movies go fucking hard.
There were some insane scores. And I wrote down some of them. So like Obsession, you were like digging that movie. And that is the last one or one of the last ones Bernard Herrmann did. He got nominated twice this year because he also did Taxi Driver.
Yeah, those two have such distinct edge. They just give the movies so much extra feeling that you don't even know what's happening.
And they're so different. And it's
Absolutely.
the same guy. Who the hell knew you could pull that shit out? Outlaw Josie Wales. In the moment that we were watching it, there were times where I was like, wow, even this one has a really good score.
Yeah, it's very muted. It's not everywhere like it is in all these other movies. But yes. One other one you haven't mentioned is The Omen. Again, a very scary movie that the music just kind of has to complement it everywhere. But it might be my real answer. It might just be a joke answer, but I challenge all of you folks who are listening to this, just go and seek out Assault on Precinct 13, just the main theme to that, and just vibe with that shit. You will thank me later.
John Carpenter knows how to score his own movies.
He knows how to score his movies. He knows how to direct movies. Man, it's not a great movie, but that song, that theme is everywhere, and I loved it.
So my answer you did just touch on. My real answer is The Omen.
Hell yeah, it is.
It's that thing where every time I'm removed from watching The Omen, I kind of back off and I don't think about it except for the song Ave Satani.
Ave Satani.
And then just before we recorded, we just kind of pulled it up and we're jumping around to different parts.
Yep.
And it's just slapping you in the face with this ominous like choir music and demon child, and it's intense and scary. Yeah, it's The Omen. It is a wild score and I am here for it.
All right, moving on. This is coming in from Mike at Cinemusts asking, Carrie is my favorite Stephen King adaptation. What is your favorite and why?
I had to look into this because here's the thing. Stephen King mostly does horror, and there are so many of his adaptations that you and I just haven't watched. I was literally going through and I'm like, I've never seen Children of the Corn. I've never seen Misery. I've never seen Pet Sematary. I've never seen Firestarter. These are all movies that I know exist that are Stephen King. I've not watched It. Any of the versions of them. So we are working on our horror Please forgive us. But that means by default, there's only 3 I've actually seen. Well, okay, I'm sorry. I've seen 4.
Yeah.
But I don't really have any special affinity for Stand By Me. It's something I'm going to have to go back and revisit at some point.
I'm going to say these 3 are probably my same 3.
Is it The Shawshank Redemption, The Green Mile, and The Shining?
Yeah,
Trent?
yeah.
So do you have an answer? Like, which one is your favorite?
It's by far Shawshank.
Yeah, I think it's for me too. But I will say The Green Mile has been climbing up this list. Like,
Yeah.
it is almost to the point that these are going to be neck and neck. But Shawshank is so fulfilling to me. I get why people love this movie. So many people say, oh, it's overrated. Fine, fair. You know what?
Yeah.
It is so satisfying an ending to that movie, though. It's really hard to not like it for me.
Shawshank just burrows into your soul and just never lets you go. You see it once, but you have to see it all the way through. You have to see the entire arc of Andy Dufresne and everybody else that surrounds him.
And then go back and watch it again and see all the stuff you missed.
Yeah, that too. But I agree. Green Mile, I've seen, I don't know, probably 10 times or more in my life. One of my favorites, but Shawshank I've seen even more times. And unfortunately, I've only seen The Shining once.
But you liked it.
I did like it.
So I think maybe The Shawshank Redemption will always be number 1, but there's always going to be room for more because he's got so many. We haven't talked about this yet. When I was trying to figure out what of his movies I had seen, The Life of Chuck, that new movie that's coming out with Tom Hiddleston, that's a Stephen King thing.
Okay.
So maybe in the coming months, we're going to see another one and have a brand new frontrunner. Who knows? People love that movie, the people who've already seen it. Okay, this question's a little bit complicated. So this came in from Rod Peters Jr. Movie Reviews. And he said, I've always played the game of who would you cast now in Murder by Death? Who would you go with? So this is kind of a long question, Trent, but let me hear. We might be bouncing off each other a little.
Here's the deal. I didn't put a whole lot of work into this one, but the obvious answer, and maybe we can kind of workshop this, is just replace all of the characters in the movie with Muppets. And you only leave one human actor.
Who is it?
And in this case, it's the Alec Guinness character. Benson Mum has to be in this because he is the blind butler. He's not going to know that they're all Muppets.
Do you have an actor that you would cast as Benson Mum?
Alec Guinness.
Oh, you would do it in...
in 1976.
Do it in
Keep
1976.
him. Yeah.
Okay, I don't have a complete cast list because I don't feel like I'm very good at this game.
Also, the characters in this movie are not as iconic as a movie like Clue.
No, I've seen this movie exactly once, and I had to go back and look and see, okay, who jumps out at me?
Yeah.
So the obvious one, what with Peter Falk being in this movie, we could make a corner of the internet extremely happy.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're going to say.
And just cast Mark Ruffalo.
Of course.
Just do that.
Just have him play Columbo. Why not?
Just have him play Columbo. Come on, guys. The other people I wrote down, just off the cuff, Kristen Wiig as the maid, the one who doesn't speak or read English.
Right. Okay.
I think she'd be really funny just in a physical role, sitting there, not doing a whole lot. The very obvious thing that needs to be fixed is any person of actual Asian descent playing the character that Peter Sellers played.
You could honestly just take him out completely.
You could.
Just completely rejigger that character altogether.
I do have an answer, though, if you wanted to be an actor of Asian descent.
Okay.
Donnie Yen.
Yeah, Donnie Yen would work. If I'm going to give one of another Asian descent, it would probably be Benedict Wong from all of those Avengers movies and whatnot.
He'd be good. He's got a sense of humor.
He really does.
A couple other people I put down. I wrote down Olivia Colman as Jessica Marbles. She was the older British lady.
Oh, yeah.
I thought she'd be pretty good in that role.
Olivia Colman in that would be good.
I don't really care which role. I just want Dan Stevens in this. I think Dan Stevens would be really, really funny because he's such a quirky actor who picks really interesting things.
Okay.
You could put him in the Peter Falk role too. I don't care. I just want Dan Stevens involved somehow.
Here's my question, just to kind of wrap up this question. Who would you put in the Truman Capote role? Who's at the head of the table?
I don't have an answer for that. I do have an answer for Benson Mum, though.
Okay.
I put Ray Fiennes. I think Ray Fiennes getting to do comedy is one of my favorite things, and he doesn't do it enough.
No, he really doesn't. He should, man.
But no, I didn't get as far as coming up with a good answer for the Truman Capote. who is the equivalent of that today? Like, one person I thought of was RuPaul. I don't know why that tickled me.
Oh, fuck. Honestly, just RuPaul coming out in just street clothes. I mean, for lack of a better word.
Not in drag.
No,
just
not
as
at
RuPaul.
all. Just as RuPaul. I love it. Okay. Moving on. Next, a series of questions comes in from Heather Stewart, which I know, if you are a fan of the Revisionist Almanac, is a superstar amongst all podcasters around there. We love you too, Heather. So
she is the question queen.
That's right. First of all, where does all the president's men? Hey, coming in hot with a question about one of my favorites. Where does all the president's men rank for you compared to all other investigative journalism thrillers?
I wrote 4 words, Heather. The best. Full stop.
Okay.
I think it's
literally, Betsy, I have 4 paragraphs I could read here.
Oh, God. No. I think as far as this kind of genre film, I can't even think of that many. And the ones I can think of are never quite as good as this one.
You're right. And I said, there really aren't that many of them, but you really just have to take the different eras of journalism representing different things. So this one is about Watergate and all of the things around or surrounding that. You also have movies, like Network. Network is a journalism movie at its core. Both of them are.
It's just one that's written and one that is television. It's visual and written. That's
Absolutely. But at their core, they are about journalism, telling people what's going on. For me, I would say Spotlight is a very, very close second to All the President's Men.
You do watch Spotlight an awful lot.
I do. I think it is All the President's Men because it shows, both of these do, but because it shows the actual work of the journalists doing the work. And Spotlight, it also shows how the work affects them personally, and the fact that objectivity in journalism is not an absolute thing. You have a point of view. You have to. You are a person. You have feelings. You have emotions.
How can you not be involved?
You have a morality. And when you're watching a movie like Spotlight, if you know what the subject matter is about, you know.
But also, Spotlight doesn't exist without All the President's Men. It's just that they took that idea, did it, and then added an element to make it their own thing.
Some other ones that I kind of pointed out here. Good Night and Good Luck is another one that is very much a journalism
really good
movie.
One.
Frost Nixon is another one of my favorites. It's tangentially related to journalism because you have the entire team who's doing the research about it, but then you also have the interviewer using the information that they gather to try to get information out of the subject.
Can you tell Trent likes this genre?
That's why I said I wrote a whole goddamn paragraph here. The Post is good. It's not great.
No, it's just good. Yeah. It's trying to be All the President's Men, and it can't be.
It really can't. Also, just to throw out a wild card here, Nightcrawler is another journalism movie, but from a different perspective.
But these are all movies that came out after and owe a lot to this movie specifically.
100%. But I think the really important thing about journalism movies is about the actual subjects, the characters who are actually doing the work, and seeing them do the actual shoe leather journalism that the job really entails. It's boring when you talk about it just casually, but when you see it happen, you can dramatize it. So again, I really like journalism movies. They should make more of them.
Well, speaking of journalism movies, her next question is, how have the themes of Network held up over time and discuss the relevance today?
Betsy, how much time you got?
I don't have that much time because I'm just going to tell people listening to this, we literally did an entire episode just talking about Network and how they have a movie that used to be a satire that is now a fucking horror movie.
Yeah. Go back 2 years in the Never Seen It podcast timeline, I guess, and go seek out our Network episode if you really want to hear all of our thoughts. But again, you talk about the fact that during the time in which we are covering that movie, there was talk about like these 24-hour news networks going to court and trying to defend themselves, and in so defending themselves, they say, no one who has a serious brain would take what we say literally and seriously. This is all entertainment. What are you talking about? Even though news is in your title, of course.
Are we talking about network or real life, Trent?
Yeah.
Because the fact that you didn't provide enough context in that statement suggests to me that answers the question right there.
Another example was they're talking about like foreign investment from other countries. So in that movie, I think it's actually Saudi Arabia who is putting money into the parent company of the network.
That could never happen.
And the same thing was happening at the time. It's back when Saudi Arabia was basically trying to buy golf and put a whole bunch of money into the WWE. And they continue to do so today. So again, that is just a smidgen of some of the stuff.
Sliver.
Yeah, just of some of the stuff that we were talking about in that episode, just to promote ourselves for a little while here. Go and seek out our network episode. It's maybe one of our best ones. All right, moving on. I'm glad that I'm asking this question because I didn't watch this one. Watching Bugsy Malone in a vacuum, is it obvious that Foster would become the biggest acting star of the cast?
All right, so of course you're talking about Jodie Foster because that was one of her other movies that she made in 1976.
Yeah, I did not watch this movie.
So I actually got a message from Heather asking if I was planning on watching this movie.
I remember this.
And I had a Sunday free a few months ago, and I decided to watch it just because she had reached out. And that movie is something. If we're talking about this movie in a vacuum, no, I don't think you could look at this movie and tell anybody was going to be a star because it is such a bizarre movie. It's a gangster movie, but they're children, but it's also kind of a musical, but all of the songs are sung by the same person. And it's very weird.
I got a scowl on my face, Betsy. Yeah. I want nothing to do with this fucking movie.
And there's like guns, but the guns shoot pie. And
what?
Like literally, it's a children's movie and it's about gangsters. You don't want to gun children down in the street, so they throw pies at them. But once they have been pied, it's like they're dead. They are not in the movie anymore.
Okay.
So it is an absolutely insane thing.
It's as if the guns in the original quote unquote version of the movie were there, but then in post production they took them out, like they took the guns out of E.T.
Kind of
at one point.
Like they are holding what looks like a gun, but when they get shot with whipped cream.
Oh God.
So that is the context we're talking about. That's the vacuum. That is the vacuum. And yeah, to look at it, the other person who is the star of that movie is Scott Baio. He's like a baby in this because it's before Happy Days, before Joni Loves Chachi and stuff.
Yeah.
And like she's good in it, he's good in it, I guess, as far as like judging child performances. But the movie overall is so bizarre that I don't think if you looked at this by itself, you could say, that woman's going to win 2 Oscars. But moving on from that question, her next question, how did Carrie and SpaceX performance pave the way for more awards recognition for the horror genre?
Well, don't forget about Piper Laurie. Cannot forget about her.
Yes, we must include her in this conversation.
Yeah, I think it is honestly a matter of believability for both of these actresses. If they put in an over-the-top performance and they're screaming and they're just really over the top. If they were like that, you can't really take it seriously, which means you can't be scared by it.
Which is what people usually assume the horror genre is just a bunch of people,
especially the actors
just
in it,
running around screaming, especially women, especially in the 70s, because they're just kind of playing bimbos a lot of the time in horror movies. And these two women are not bimbos.
And because you believe both of their characters here, you believe that they would do these things or say these things. Because the acting is so great, the terror is real.
Now, I had a couple of thoughts when I was thinking about this question. First of all, just a little bit before this movie comes out, it's just a few years earlier, we got The Exorcist, and the actresses in that movie also got nominated. So it's not like horror movies had never been acknowledged. Rosemary's Baby, the woman in that, Ruth Gordon, she won.
Yeah.
Now, that's a different kind of performance within a horror movie, but it is a precedent to have this like late 60s, early 70s movement. So I don't think Carrie necessarily set the standard. But then there's the other part of my brain that's really cynical because there is a precedent for nominating these people. And then we are in 2025 where people are like, why didn't Toni Collette get nominated? Why didn't, Lupita Nyong'o get nominated? Why didn't we do that when we were doing it in 76? If you listen to the whole episode of the Revisionist Almanac for 76, we point out there just weren't that many meaty roles for women. And
women in general.
And the cynical part of my brain is saying, would these two have actually been nominated had it been more of a stacked year? If just one movie or one actress had had a bigger featured role, we could have just thrown Carrie out the window.
You're probably right.
That's the cynical
You're probably
part.
right.
Because they did it, yes, but then when was the next time anybody from a horror movie got nominated?
The thoughts I was having when you were talking there is, think about the 1980s. Think about what happened right after the 70s here, where you have these fucking banger movies that have acting nominations coming out of them. Then you move on to the 80s movie where it just becomes really, really campy and you can't take them as seriously as you were the 1970s versions.
They take the reality out of it and they became silly as far as like the casual viewer is concerned.
Exactly. And I think the Academy their minds were maybe poisoned a little bit by the campiness of the 1980s slasher movies and how many of them there were after the 1970s.
They were cheap to produce and people loved them, so they made money.
Yeah. Next question from Heather. She says, have you done the Rocky run up the steps in Philadelphia and followed it with the winner's pose at the top?
We were in Philadelphia.
We've been in Philadelphia once.
But we didn't do this.
I don't even think we were near there, were we?
I don't believe we were. I think we may have been closer than we realized.
Yeah, we didn't seek it out, though.
We didn't have anything but public transportation and our feet to get around.
Yeah, and we were going to that Ben Franklin Museum, I think, right? It was
the Franklin Institute.
The Franklin Institute, yeah.
Yeah, so we were there. We were like down in like the historic area, like the Liberty Bell and stuff.
Yeah, we were downtown,
but we also
doing the touristy things.
We weren't there very long. We were only in Philly for like 2 days.
Right.
So alas, no, we did not. But if we ever go back, I think we will. Now that we've actually seen
assured.
Rocky. Because we hadn't seen Rocky at the time.
At that point,
we didn't care. And a follow-up question about Rocky. Is the Rocky theme the most inspiring theme music of all time?
I'm going to say no, but it is the best song to put underneath your training montage scenes.
Yeah, these are the questions that seem to be recurring is Rocky important? Look at how many people have varying questions about the importance of Rocky.
Yeah, all valid questions too.
Yeah, this score, iconic. One of the most iconic, sure. And if you're doing a training montage, it has been spoofed to death.
It's perfect. But thanks, Heather, for all those great questions. Moving on to the next questioner, we got Jeff from The Movie Man asking a really long one, but I think it's important. Saying, I read a long time ago that Paul Schrader's script for Taxi Driver was written in 5 days with a loaded gun on his desk for inspiration. While the script was still one of the film's 4 Oscar-nominated components, do you think little tricks like this help make a film better? Or is it just good or bad whether or not there is a loaded gun, a shaved head, or a nice little diet to add to the aspect?
Honestly, if it gets the job done, cool, whatever works. But that's not going to work for everybody. Like, every writer is going to have their own method. And if having a loaded gun for inspiration is what works for you, crank it out in 4 days. Cool.
Clearly it did help.
But
because,
hey, that's going to scare the shit out of some other poor little writer. Someone writing a rom-com doesn't need that.
I don't know. I haven't seen a whole lot of them. But yeah, I mean, if what you need as a writer is a gimmick to be inspired, to even create something in the first place, or if you want to get into the mind of your own character that you are writing, because clearly Taxi Driver is all about Travis Bickle. It is not really about New York. It is not really about the other people in the movie. It's all about Travis.
And what's going on in his head.
Exactly. So if that's what it takes for you as a writer to get into the mind of your own character, do it. Gimmick or not, I don't care.
The next question comes in from Kevin Scanlon. What is your 1976 Mount Rushmore? It doesn't have to be the consensus for best films. Just give me your 4 favorites.
Easy. And thank you for mentioning Mount Rushmore because, hey, we're from South Dakota,
South
the
Dakota!
home of Mount Rushmore. The George Washington for me is Network, followed by Jefferson as All the President's Men, then Teddy as The Omen, and finally my Lincoln is Seven Beauties. I said it. Seven Beauties is my number 4 of that year. Come at me.
I took a slightly different approach to this. Just if we're going to make a monument of 1976 that really is representative of the year, this is how I approached it.
Okay.
And I think it should be Network, Carrie, Taxi Driver, and Rocky. Pulling out all the weeds, cleaning up all the noise and the clutter. If you're talking about the most iconic, like we're going to say this is what 1976 was like, those are the 4 I'd put.
Yeah, if you are representing that year of cinema, especially of this Oscar stuff, 100%. I just said my favorites. Moving on from our Mount Rushmore, questions coming in. We saw these questions come in months and months ago, and I was really having a hard time to think of what the hell I was going to say. But this one comes in from Jayla Salah Salman. On a scale of 1 to 10, how hot was Dustin Hoffman in 1976? And we're not saying, hey, he's a really in-demand actor. Oh, no. Dude took his shirt off a lot.
He did. I'm going with a hard 10. A hard 10.
Whoa.
Because here's the thing. It shouldn't be working for me because I'm like a foot taller than Dustin Hoffman. But there is something about that guy and his charm. And he's a short king. And I'm just... The long hair, it works. I don't know why. It just does. Like when he's sitting around in All the President's Men, you know, he's got one foot up and he's smoking his cigarettes and he's just kind of smirking out the side of his mouth. Come on. And then we watch Marathon Man and he takes his shirt off and just that's it. I'm just going with a hard 10. I'm going to keep it simple.
Okay. I mean, I'll give him a solid 8.
You'll give him an 8?
I'll give him a solid 8.
That's fair. I think anything above an 8 is the right answer. If it's lower than that, we have to have a discussion.
All right, that's fair.
All right, and this is going to be our last question of the evening. Trent, which was the thongiest moment in a 1976 movie?
Let's enunciate that just a little bit more.
Thongiest.
Thongiest.
Thongiest. Like a thong?
Yeah, the thing you wear on your person.
If you're in Australia, it's on your feet, but to Americans, it's not.
I mean, I don't know where this person is from, so hey. But no, in our parlance, we're going to say thongiest as, you know, in an American standpoint. I put down 2 different movies here. I think the obvious one is The Killing of a Chinese Bookie.
It takes place in a strip club. It is the obvious answer.
It's the obvious answer because it has a whole bunch of women in thongs on stage. The second one, I mean, I don't even think they're wearing thongs in the scene, but the scene where in Logan's Run, they go into this pleasure palace and everybody's fucking naked.
Or damn close to it. We're not really sure.
Yeah, so maybe they're wearing something on their bottoms, but you can't really see because it's not a rated R movie. That's a PG movie, and there's a whole lot of naked people in it. Anyway. Those are my answers. Betsy, what are yours?
Do you
have any others?
I do have a second answer because my first is also Killing of a Chinese Bookie.
Yeah.
But I watched a movie called Stay Hungry starring Jeff Bridges and the film debut of Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it is about the world of bodybuilding.
Oh.
And near the end of the movie, they're at the male bodybuilding competition, and they all run out into the streets in their little bikini briefs. They're not really thongs, but it's a bunch of dudes in underwear.
It's effectively that, I'm sure.
And they're running around the streets in, I think, Alabama or Georgia. I don't remember exactly where. Like they're just flexing for people and riding. They somehow end up on buses. Like they're riding on the tops of buses, going through traffic and standing in the streets. And it just turns into this weird end of the movie.
Okay.
It's not a good movie, but if we're talking thongiest, it's amongst them.
There you go. All right, that is the end of the questions that were submitted to Andrew for us to take care of. So, Betsy, did you have any other thoughts before we get out of here?
I hope you've enjoyed further information about our experience watching all of these movies.
Yeah, it's a lot of movies. We don't normally do a whole lot of movies back to back to back to back because our show is just, we cover one movie per episode once a week. It's a movie that either one of us or neither of us had seen yet. We sit down, talk about what we think we know about the movie before we see it. We go see it. Then we come back and give our reaction. That's our show. It is Never Seen It with Betsy and Trent. We put out new episodes every single Sunday. If you would like, you can also send us questions directly about these movies or any movies that we have covered or not covered yet. Our email address is neverseenitpod@gmail.com. We're on all the social medias. I'm sure Andrew is going to post all of those in the description of this here thing. But I want to say thank you to all of the people who have submitted questions for this episode. Thank you to Andrew for having us on the show. It's been a really cool time to do something different.
It's been a fun project.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to look at the 1976 movies that I may stumble across a little differently.
Yeah.
I may hesitate a little more than when we were doing the project about actually just hitting play on them, but I'm going to stop and think about it, certainly.
Honestly, this is the only time, this question episode and the actual episode, it's the only time we've actually had to talk about these movies, because normally we cover a movie in its entirety, not just in little clips here and there.
And we only did that for a handful of movies from 76.
Yeah.
So this was fun.
Yeah. So thanks again for everybody who participated in this. Again, my name is Trent.
My name is Betsy.
And we'll catch you over on Never Seen It.
Bye.
We're all getting fed up of endlessly scrolling for our next movie fix. So to get passionate about films again, join three movie mates on the Never Ending Watchlist movie podcast, where we take you on a movie journey as we seek to build the ultimate movie watchlist.
Seen all of those films are absolute bangers.
Yep.
Absolute bangers.
Bangers.
I applaud you again, sir.
We deep dive specific movies to find out facts, theories, and funny takes, and ultimately decide whether a movie is worthy of being on the watchlist.
I can't recommend this film.
Ouch.
We'll debate top fives, rank directors' movies, and interview film fans just like you.
And she is an incredibly complex villain. She's fierce, she's immovable.
So whether you're a casual movie fan or hardened cinephile, we've got plenty for you to enjoy.
I got outvoted by the guy who chose the movie for this episode.
Join me, Damon Carter, Alex Hall, and Cam Young on the Never Ending Watchlist movie podcast every week on Podcast Everywhere.
It's easier to find Cameron on Facebook than it is to find a plot in existence. Right, anyway, for now, it's farewell to Alex.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Betsy and Trent, for your involvement in this mailbag, and for, of course, being so wonderful on the 1976 episode itself. Thank you again to everyone that submitted questions. They are always appreciated. I hope you had some fun listening to me, Betsy, and Trent all answer your 1976 questions, and I'll be back a month from now tackling even more questions, though those will be relating to the year 1975, where Milos Forman's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest won Best Picture. While you're here, I hope you'll take time to rate and review the show on your preferred podcast streaming platform, as well as finding and following the show on all social media platforms using the handle Rev Almanac. As always, I'm Andrew, and I can't wait to see you next time.